You're listening to another episode of the Coaster101 podcast. I'm Andrew Stillwell, joined this week by my fellow writer on the Coaster101 team, Nick Weisenberger in Ohio. Nick, how's it going?
Oh, pretty good.
You know, it's been a good run of shows with you recently, Nick. We're glad to have you back on the podcast for sure. One day, I think we'll get your two kids back on the podcast. If you've listening for the first time, be sure to go back into the archives. We've done a couple of fun interviews with Nick's kids, and they go about as well as you would expect a 7 and 4 year old, right?
8 and
Nick?
5.
8 and 5. Close. So I had the gap right, but yeah. They go about as well and as wild and off the rails as you'd expect. So forgive the roller coaster pun, but be sure to go back and check those out in the archives. But Nick, this week, we're going to talk about a park that you visited a long time ago when you're an enthusiast, but more recently as a dad. And some people often refer to it as the redheaded stepchild of the Cedar Fair family. To that, I say they didn't sell it yet. So they've got that going for it, which is nice. But we're talking about Michigan's Adventure, located in Muskegon, Michigan. And, you know, it's a park that has a little, a pretty storied history. The park opened as Deer Park in 1956 and was renamed to Michigan's Adventure in 1988. And then Cedar Fair actually purchased them in 2001. So it's one of the smaller Cedar Fair parks for sure. But Nick, I want to talk to you as someone who's visited this park. And the first question I have, does it deserve all the crap that coaster enthusiasts give this park, or is the talking down unwarranted?
Going right into the deep discussion right away. So I really think it depends on the viewpoint that you look at this park. So there's kind of 2 points that I look from, like the coaster enthusiast and like the family viewpoint. So if you're a coaster enthusiast, and like, if you're someone who had just gone to Kings Island or Cedar Point, and you're like, hey, let's go to Michigan's Adventure and get all the coaster credits, and you go there and to do that, yeah, you're going to be disappointed because it's not Kings Island, it's not Cedar Point, and really, there is no marquee attraction at Michigan's Adventure. Like, there's no roller coaster worth driving a long distance for. Now, on the other hand, if you're a family person, if you're a local, and you just want to have a fun day with your family, it's great. Then yeah, it's a lot better than people are saying. You can have, like, that was our mindset going in. Like, I just wanted to have a fun day with my family, and we did. So it was fine.
Yeah. And, you mentioned it from a coaster enthusiast perspective. And, Michigan's Adventure, to its credit, they do have 7 roller coasters and, several of them, Woodstock Express, which has recently been renamed and relocated, and Zach Zoomer, they're kind of more designed towards families, and they've got a Wild Mouse, but they've got 4 coasters that on RCDB kind of fall under that extreme category. So it's definitely, I've been to parks this year, especially, that don't have 7 credits. And so it is what it is. Unfortunately, if you want to ride all the coasters, you got to hit some of these smaller parks for sure. But they have not opened a new major coaster since 2008, which is Thunderhawk. That came over from Geauga Lake. Yep. I believe it was known as Headspin. Is that right?
It's Serial Thriller at one point.
Yes. Okay. Serial Thriller, Thunderhawk. It's had a bunch of names, but it is the enthusiast favorite Vekoma SLC, which is, if you've ridden one SLC that's not T4 at Kentucky Kingdom, you've ridden them all. And we don't really need to talk about it, but their last new to them coaster was in 1999, and that was Mad Mouse, one of the few remaining aerodynamics Wild Mouse coasters. But let's talk their 2 kind of major wooden roller coasters here. And one of them received a kind of a new addition in this off season by way of Skyline Attractions and GCI, and that's the Titan Track. Nick, what can you tell us about Wolverine Wildcat, and how does the Titan Track improve that experience?
So the Titan Track is the smoothest piece of part of any ride at Michigan's Adventure. So yeah, Wolverine Wildcat, Din coaster built in '88.
Yep.
It's kind of in layout. It's kind of similar to Phoenix at Knoebels. It starts out with a long dark tunnel, but yeah. So the Titan track is on the first drop, and it goes up the first hill. And like someone said that track is like skating on ice, which is true. That it is so smooth. It's just crazy. And the difference between that track and the rest of the ride is crazy because it is not a smooth ride at all. It's pretty rough, and it's kind of what I would call a nothing ride, or it's just like a forgettable coaster. It's not really forceful. There's lots of little hills, so that there should be airtime, but there's not really any airtime. So it's just kind of a forgettable ride. So I would definitely like to see them continue the Titan track on through the rest of the layout and smooth it out.
And then, for those who might not know what Titan Track is, it is kind of GCI's answer to RMC. I think that's the easiest way to put it. It's more of a steel track.
Yeah, it's all steel.
All steel. There's no welds. It's all rivets. That's right.
Yep.
Right.
Correct.
And there was 200 feet of this track installed on Wolverine Wildcat, and it's popped up at a few other wooden coasters around the country. It first was installed on White Lightning at Fun Spot down in Orlando. Also got there was some 250 feet of track installed at Predator at Darien Lake outside of Buffalo. So, they're slowly but surely rolling out this Titan track on not necessarily coasters that are designed by GCI, but maybe the GCI / Skyline designed the Titan track for GCI, but they're working on it and trying to breathe a little bit of new life into some of these classic wooden coasters. Your Din coasters of the world, which are becoming fewer and further between, for sure.
Yeah, and that's one thing. Like that track definitely takes away that wood coaster feeling. But I guess my point is, if that feeling's not fun to begin with, then like if you can get some airtime back in the ride, if you changed it all to Titan track, then I'd say go for it.
I would agree. And then what about their other major wooden coaster, Shivering Timbers, which let's just call a spade. This is the biggest coaster that the park has built from the ground up, and it opened in 1998, and there hasn't been a bigger coaster built at the park since. What did you think of Shivering Timbers?
So I rode this ride first back in 2006 because that was my main reason for traveling from Ohio to Michigan's Adventure. And back then it was worth it because that was like, RMC wasn't around yet. GCI was kind of just beginning. So at the time, like that was one of the marquee wooden roller coasters in the world. And actually, if you go back and look at the Golden Ticket Awards, I think from 2000 to 2004, it was ranked the number 2 wooden roller coaster in the world.
Holy smokes.
So it had a really good reputation. But my recent rides there, it was just not very good. And I wanted this ride to be good so bad. Like I gave it multiple chances. I rode it in the front. I rode it in the middle. I rode it in the back. I rode it at the beginning of the day. I rode it at the end of the day. And I don't know what's happened to it, but it's not enjoyable. There's the first drop's not bad, but as you're going up that first airtime hill, there's a noticeable jolt. And then after that, it's just rough. There was little airtime, and it's just not very good anymore.
Well, that's a shame, but these CCI coasters, again, kind of like the Din coasters, they're becoming fewer and further between. So I will say, if you get the opportunity to, head to Michigan's Adventure and take a ride on Shivering Timbers, it's there. Nick didn't really sell it that well, but we're gonna get by. But I want to talk. Well, go ahead.
Well, at first I was thinking like maybe it's just me. Maybe I'm just turning into a cranky old man. But then I went to Kings Island yesterday, and I was like, okay, if I like the Racer and the Beast and Mystic Timbers, then it's not me. Then it's Shivering Timbers. And like Beast was great, Shivering Timbers great. Mystic Timbers was great, and I actually enjoyed the Racer more than Shivering Timbers. Like there's actually more time on the racer at Kings Island than there is on Shivering Timbers right now.
Wow.
I don't
Yeah.
know. Maybe I just was there on a day when they were using the square wheels instead of the round ones. I don't know.
Square wheels. Love it. Yeah, you put that on Twitter and you got a lot of hate. I saw definitely there was feedback from guys like Scott at Upstop Media and Jack, Thrilling Moment Photography. And, maybe they just want to dunk on us. But, I, having not been to Michigan's Adventure or the state of Michigan ever, really, I can't speak one way or another. But your opinion is your opinion, Nick. So even if you retweet it from your own personal account, it's just the way it goes.
Well, I think the key is I'm saying right now, like years ago, yeah, Shivering Timbers was way better than Racer. Like Shivering Timbers was one of the best wood coasters out there, but I don't know what's happened to it, but it was just not enjoyable.
Yeah, well, and we do know that the Racer they've seen a significant facelift.
Yeah, they've had the Gravity Group has come in and fixed up Racer and the Beast. So that's what I would actually like to see them do to Shivering Timbers to bring that back to its former glory.
Yeah, and hopefully one day it'll happen. We shall see. And again, we joked about it at the top of the show, but there is a little bit of that, again, kind of forgotten child of the Cedar Fair family aspect there. But again, there's a reason that this park doesn't go all in on thrills, and that is definitely more of a family aspect. And so, yep. Nick, I want to hear your opinion of kind of seeing the park, through your kids' eyes a little bit. I know you mentioned to me, we were talking before the show, Henry got on his tallest and longest wooden coaster he's ever ridden, which is Zach's Zoomer. It's a CCI wooden coaster, 41 feet tall, 1,400 feet long. But, what was it like kind of seeing these attractions through your kids' eyes, kind of like new appreciation of the park?
Yeah, it gives you kind of a much different opinion of the park. Because like I said, if you're going just for the coasters yourself, you're going to be disappointed. But when you do it with your kids, like they aren't like thinking about like, oh, this park's better or worse than this other park. They just want to have fun in the moment. So like, I mean, even things like the petting zoo they have there, like they're like, oh, they go crazy over that. So it's just a lot of fun going with kids. And they have a lot of, family friendly attractions there and unique ones too. Like they have the park is laid out. It should be a circle, but it's kind of a U shape around a lake. It's the one side of the park is the train connects the other side, but of course it was closed that day. But so in the lake, they have a swan boat ride, which I think those boats actually came from Cedar Point, and they were taken out when Maverick was put in. But it's not an upcharge attraction. It's a swan paddle boats that look like swans that you can take out on the lake there. And then like they only have 4 or 5 boats, so it's like super low capacity attraction. So you wouldn't see that at a lot of parks. That's just a really fun way, relaxing way to see Michigan's Adventures, to go out there on the water. And they have other things too, like a mini golf course in the middle of the park, which is kind of one of the most scenic areas. And they actually just redid their kiddie area. It's now Camp Snoopy. I think there used to be like a car ride that they took out. And they have like a brand new Camp Snoopy area, which I think was supposed to open 2 years ago. And then, of course, the pandemic hit. So I think it just opened last year. And that's where they moved the Woodstock coaster over there.
Yeah, I do remember I remember kind of when everything was announced in 2019, we're like, oh my gosh, they're redoing the kids area at Michigan's Adventure. They're getting a new coaster. oh wait, it's the same coaster.
It's the same one. They just moved it a couple feet.
It's all good though.
And like the queue line and the control panel are still standing there where it used to be. So I posted on Twitter, like, what is this? Like, oh, that's where the coaster was. Oh
yeah. Funny thing about that. I want to talk a little bit also, speaking of 2020, when Michigan's Adventure reopened, the main attraction that reopened in their park post-COVID was the water park. I don't believe the dry park opened at all that first season. I think it was just the water park in summer of 2020 when they reopened. But what'd you think of the water park? Did you spend any time there?
Yeah, we spent about, over 2 hours in the water park. So it was great. And that's one thing I would say, like, if you want to get your full value out of your Michigan's Adventure ticket, you need to spend time in the water park, because I mean, really, in the dry park, there's just not enough to do for a full day. So I really recommend going to the water park, even if you're not a water park person. So yeah, we really enjoyed it, especially like the kids area is really good. There's a giant water play structure. You know how most of them have like the giant dumping bucket?
Mm-hmm.
They have that, but they also have like this lighthouse which shoots like a geyser of water up into the air like 90 feet.
Holy
So that was
cow.
really cool.
Nice.
They,
Well,
I think they have like 3 wave pools, like a bigger one towards the front, which I think more like the adults were going to, and then one in the back is there's a smaller one that it's kind of just more the kids were going in, and yeah, it was just I really enjoyed the water park.
yeah. And I mean, I am not a water park person, so I don't think I would actively seek it out. But it's, if you're saying that the dry park itself, once you get past the 7 coasters, there's a handful of other attractions. You've got the bumper boats, you've got bumper cars, Ripcord, which is a sky coaster, flying trapeze. I mean, that's it for thrill rides. But they do have a lot of, like Nick mentioned, family attractions. They've got some new Zamperla rides that came as part of that Camp Snoopy attraction. They've
Well,
got
oh, so some of the attractions you just named actually. So the train was closed, the Ferris wheel was closed, the flying trapeze was in pieces, and there were signs for the bumper boats, but I didn't actually see any bumper boats anywhere.
okay. Well, I
So that was a little bit of a bummer.
this is what I get from reading Wikipedia. But yeah, so anyway, they've got 4 new Zamperla rides as part of Camp Snoopy. They've got a
Yeah.
couple other small family attractions, and then a couple of water rides as well. They've got a Shoot the Chutes, a Rapids ride, a log flume. So I mean, what, Nick, was it you on Twitter the other day who was talking about kind of the demise of the log flume and how we didn't see them very many places?
Yeah, because that was one of the things that we really liked about Michigan's Adventures. They still have a log flume. Because my Henry loved that one. Like he wanted to go on it over and over, so we went on it a couple times. Because it's great where you get a little wet, but not soaked or too wet or anything.
Right. Okay. Were there any standouts for Henry and Nora, kind of their favorites other than the log flume?
I think Nora's favorite ride was Winky the Whale, which is some little vehicles that are shaped like whales that go around in a circle, and there's like a little rail, so they kind of like go up and down, like forward and backwards motion.
Mm-hmm.
And so that was her favorite, but that was probably my least favorite ride because those cars were not designed for adults. So
It's true.
and that ride actually has probably the longest cycle time of any of the rides we went on, because I went on that with her, and while Henry went on Zach Zoomer, and like we were in the ride and started, and like they went over to the coaster, got in line, rode the coaster, came back, and we were still on the ride.
Wow. that is nuts. Okay. Well, let's put our Imagineering hat on here. What is one thing you would add or change about Michigan's Adventure to improve the park? And it could be a new attraction, new coaster, taking something out, changing a layout. What would be your biggest point of improvement for Michigan's Adventure?
Ooh, that's a good one. That's a tough question because again, like it goes back to like enthusiast versus family, like his target audience. So like as an enthusiast, like you'd want to see them if they built something unique, they would bring in coaster enthusiasts from all over the country. If they did like the first SNS access coaster or something like that, but I don't think that fits the demographic of their park. Like their main target audience is families, like local families. So
Yep,
like
that's
what?
true.
So is there a ride that you could target where you could satisfy both, where you could do something for mainly for families, but unique enough that it would pull in the coaster enthusiasts as well? So
Yeah.
like what coaster type would do that?
Well, if they start building now, there's a chance they could get a Mock Rides Power Splash open before Six Flags Over Texas. So
That's true.
there's a chance there. And I think that kind of plays off that water ride, the water park being the main draw. And, again, there's parks in Cedar Fair, like Carowinds comes to mind, for example. There are no water rides in the dry side of the park, and Michigan's Adventure has at least three, if not a fourth. I don't know what Hydro Blaster is. I don't know if that's in the dry park or in the water park itself. It's listed with the dry attractions.
Yeah, it's like right next to the water park, like not like there's kind of like an entrance for the water park, so it's kind of on the side, so it kind of is in the dry park, but some kind of slide you can go on.
Yeah, it's an enclosed water slide. So again, I think they do put a premium a little bit on water attractions, and those do attract a crowd for sure. So I think a mock power splash could open there. You could probably, the names like a Gerstlauer Eurofighter or an RMC Raptor or a smaller coaster with even a Skyrocket 2 from Premier that you don't need a ton of real estate. It's a big draw for that park because to my knowledge in the state of Michigan, there's not a lot of other competition. There's, that park, Craig's Cruisers that has the first SBF hamster wheel coaster, and that's about it, I feel like. Right?
Yeah, there's another like FEC style place near Detroit, which I'm forgetting the name of, but yeah, Michigan's Adventure is the largest amusement park in Michigan.
That's because it's the only. Sorry, we're just gonna pull that from the Jaws ride, but yeah, we're the best. It's because we're the only scenic boat cruise on the island. Any other hidden gems you can think of when thinking about Michigan's Adventure, or something that people shouldn't skip over on their next visit? Guess not. Okay.
No, I mean, the one thing I did like though was just the low crowds. So basically everything was a walk on. So even though like there isn't anything too unique, like when you don't have to wait in lines, it makes it a lot better.
Right. Okay, that's true. I mean, crowds, again, we're talking middle of summer. I know you were there on a weekday, but
yeah. So that was the thing though, that for Michigan's Adventure was a little maybe scary for them, because we were there Friday of the July 4th holiday weekend. The park was only open 11 to 8, which seems kind of short to me when you're supposed to be in your peak summer season. So that says either you're not expecting big crowds, or you're having staffing issues, or maybe a little both.
Got it. Okay. Well, I want to talk a little bit more about, you did touch on this earlier. You took a trip to Kings Island as well, and it's your first season as a Cedar Fair Platinum Passholder. And I do want to touch on this. This has been like one purchase I have made every year for like the past 5 years at this point, because I always will find a way, because my home park is Carowinds. It's 45 minutes up the road, not even. I try to get to Kings Dominion once a year, but then there's always the chance that we end up at a Cedar Fair park somewhere, be it Worlds of Fun or Dorney Park or Kings Island or anything like that. Any park I've been to over the last couple of years. How's your experience been so far as a Cedar Fair Platinum Pass holder?
I'm loving it so far for the 2 times that I've used it. But yeah, that was the main reason for going to Michigan's Adventure. It wasn't like, oh, let's go to Michigan's Adventure. We were planning a trip like up the coast to northern Michigan to the Sleeping Bear Dunes and such. And at the same time, we were discussing some future plans for Coaster101. So it was just like, well, if I get a Platinum Pass, I can use it at multiple places. So that was mainly like just an add-on to our Michigan trip, was Michigan's Adventure.
Yeah.
But then, yeah, so actually I added up the cost of a single day ticket to Michigan's Adventure plus parking and a Canada's Wonderland and a Kings Island. If you bought one ticket and parking for all those 3, it was like the exact cost of a Platinum Pass. So I thought if I can make it to at least those 3 parks, it would pay for itself. And Kings Island is only about an hour and a half from me here in Columbus.
Yeah.
So I figured I can make it there more than once this year.
Exactly.
Hopefully maybe even Cedar Point sometime. So it just made a lot of sense to get the pass. And then, yeah, I was able to use it at Kings Island yesterday. Just went down for a couple hours. And what I really like about it is just there's not that pressure. Like when you have a single day ticket and you're only there for a day, you want to go on this ride. You want to get your money's worth. So there's a lot more pressure to go on all these attractions to get value. So it's nice having a pass. You don't have that pressure. So I rode what I wanted to, and then just walked around and was able to just take my time and soak it all in.
Yeah, that's one of my favorite things to do when visiting, these Cedar Fair parks that I've been to, tens, dozens of times, is just walking around, taking in the atmosphere, seeing a show, just waiting for that perfect picture taking opportunity with a roller coaster. And that's, to me, I think being a pass holder has kind of definitely changed my perspective. And I know you put on there, it's like you visited again. It was like a Wednesday in the middle of the summer. So you rode 5 coasters in your first hour and then spent the rest of the time just walking around. And you were there for what, 4 or 5 hours, hit the road, came back home, and you can do it again soon. And it's paid for at this point. You've got your money's worth. And to me, I can justify it. I think there's been years where, based on parking alone, I've covered the cost of my Platinum Pass. So this is not sponsored content by Cedar Fair or anything like that. But if you're hardcore into this hobby, and I know our listeners range from kind of new to the hobby to hardcore enthusiast, I think a season pass, especially one of those Platinum Passes or all access or whatever the top tier passes, depending on the park chain you are attending the most. It's such a good value purchase. And then on top of that, you can get the dining plans and you can get all sorts of stuff that just kind of adds to your experience. I know I can't go anywhere at a Cedar Fair park without like guzzling down like 4 or 5 just of those terrible for the environment, great for my personal convenience, red plastic or paper cups of soda. So it's like I've paid for that all season. I know like the margin on soda is absurd to begin with, but for $30, knowing that I don't have to buy another soda, whatever that cost is, 30, $40 a season. No, I don't have to buy a soda all year to Cedar Fair Park. That's definitely a nice perk for sure.
But yeah, and there's other perks of having the Platinum Pass as well. Like besides just getting admission and parking, is you get discounts on food and merch. And then like at some parks like Kings Island, you get a half an hour early entry before the main park opens. And so they have ERT, or exclusive ride time, on a couple rides. So when I went the other day, it was the 2 coasters were the Racer and Orion, and they had a couple flat rides open, like the Dodgems and the Carousel or something. Nice. But if you go on their website, you can see which rides are open which day.
Mm-hmm. Perfect. And before we wrap this up, any highlights from your Kings Island trip that stick out?
I already talked before about how much I like the Racer now compared to Shivering Timbers. But I also, one of the things I really wanted to do was ride the Beast, because that has been worked on by the Gravity Group this past off season. And I'm glad to report that it is as good as ever.
I love it.
Like that, like the bottom of the first drop and that first turn are much more smooth and enjoyable now. I guess they actually like increased the angle of the first drop so that they could increase the radius of the pullout. And as a result, like the ride's like 2 feet longer or something, breaking their own record for the longest wood coaster.
Yes. And, there's people in our Twitter mentions who are convinced that because it's 2 more feet of track, that it's a brand new coaster credit. And while I try to subscribe to what you talked about earlier, kind of looking at this hobby through like a kid's eyes, we're not concerned about coaster counts. We're not concerned about, what's coming. We're just like living in the moment, experiencing things firsthand, having a good time, and not really having to think about anything else on top of that. Person in our Twitter mentions it is absolutely not a new credit. So if you just want to count it, I mean, by that logic, I think I've been on 714,000 roller coasters, just because, every time I get in the car in the morning, I drive 60 miles an hour. That's the speed of a roller coaster. So it's, that's fine. Anyway, my complaining and salt and snark aside, I think that's going to do it for this week's episode of the Coaster 101 podcast. If you're not aware, we've got a website, coaster101.com. By the time this airs, I think Nick might have an article on the site about his Michigan's adventure trip. Nick, I don't want to speak out of turn here, but...
Yep, I'll probably have written trip reports. Longer, more wordy versions, maybe better explanations than one we just talked about for Michigan's Adventure and Kings Island.
Perfect.
There's also there'll be videos on our YouTube channel. Check that out. And you should check that out anyway, because we've got other stuff like Glenwood Caverns just sent us over a POV of their new coaster Defiance, which is having its grand opening on Saturday, July 9th. So
nice.
Check that out.
Yeah. So after you head to the website, read the written word, go to YouTube, check out the visual media. Follow us on all forms of social media for still photos and more concise written word. We're at Coaster101 anywhere you can consume the platform. Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, Twitter. We're making moves on TikTok. We're right around 1,000 followers. So for a bunch of elder millennials, I heard that term this week and I really liked it. But for a bunch of elder millennials, we have 1,000 TikTok followers, and we still don't really know what we're doing. So we're going to have to involve Shane at some point in the future so he can speak his youthful terms to us. But if you're listening, make sure you're liking, rating, reviewing, subscribing, telling your friends, and telling other people to listen. We get some really good feedback every once in a while on Twitter. It's like people are like, hey, we love your podcast. Or people in the industry will send us an email. It's like, hey, we listen to your podcast every week, which to me is a little scary. But again, it's awesome that we're continuing to build that audience. And the way to continue to build that audience and grow it is by giving us those ratings on iTunes, those ratings on Spotify, helping more people find the show. If you're looking for the latest and greatest of Coaster101 merch or Coaster inspired merch, some of both actually, you can head to our TeePublic shop. That's c101.co/TeePublic. And thanks as always to Justin Mabry of JM Music Design for our theme music. Nick, I appreciate your time. Hopefully you'll get to another Cedar Fair Park here in the near future.
I hope so.
All right. We'll talk to y'all again soon.